In today's show, discover a new way of thinking, feel great about yourself, and achieve success in every area of your life. Every single person is powerful, perfect as they are. And I believe we all have a role to play in making this world a better place. My purpose is to help people step into their power. Hi, it's Gina Gardiner again. Why is it when we believe we want to do things, we get in our own way and sabotage any chance of lasting success? How come it's often just as things are going really well that we take our foot off the gas, lose momentum, and allow things to fizzle out? Today, I'm going to share with you the most common forms of self-sabotage and offer you some strategies to deal with them. What is it that blocks our path, and what can we do about it? Having an awareness of the pattern of behaviour which gets in the way of our success and understanding the underlying cause of our self-sabotage is vital if you're going to do anything to avoid repeating the same pattern in the future. Over the years of working with thousands of people in a variety of contexts, I've recognised a number of common patterns. Be aware that self-sabotage is sneaky. It's often dressed up in what we convince ourselves is a reasonable rationale when dealing with the situation. It can be hard to see the wood for the trees. It's one of the reasons why it can be so helpful to work with a coach who can help you recognise the behaviours which are holding you back. So, here are my 12 top self-sabotage gremlins. They come in several guises. Fear of failure. What if I get it wrong? We often choose not to get started at all. As a head, I often saw this in children, taking on the parents' pattern. I'm no good at maths. If I don't try, I haven't failed. And then parents saying to the child, you're just like me, no good at maths. It becomes a done deal. The difference between those who achieve massive success and those who don't is not that successful people are cleverer or luckier. They're just as likely to feel anxious or fearful, but they break through that fear and they keep going. They see failure as an opportunity to review, learn, change tack, and then keep going. The only failure is the failure to try or the failure to learn from the experience. The second gremlin is fear of success. People who don't get things finished, who keep things small. It can come from the belief that I'll be seen as arrogant, people won't like me, and often this fear is based on a fear of rejection. One of our deepest fears is that we will be outside the crowd. It's hot-wired into us since we were cavemen, because if you were sent away from the clan, it meant certain death. I'd like to share with you Marianne Williamson's poem because I think it really sums everything up. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Developing greater confidence and more positive sense of worth is vital, not only to avoid fear of success, but to avoid all forms of self-sabotage. For some, it's the fear of change. They want to stay in their comfort zone even when it's uncomfortable. It's why people stay in abusive relationships and jobs they hate, because it's better the devil you know. If you think about a duvet, it's really cozy in the winter, but it becomes stifling in the summer. And that's exactly how your comfort zone works. Interesting thing is, as soon as you go through your comfort barrier and do something different, the zone expands. Number 4 is procrastination. It's most commonly caused by fear of failure or success, but also in the mix is usually a poor sense of self-worth. Am I good enough, clever enough, or lack of clarity about what you actually want? And it's here that knowing your why is important. Number 5, overwhelm. It has to be perfect. And many fledgling businesses or projects are scuppered before they even start. The need to be perfect means that things never get going. A much better approach is to get to the place which is good enough and then refine things as we go. To start with fit for purpose and then aim for and work to achieve excellence. Giving up. You get so far and there's a setback and so you give up. I've mentioned before inventors like Dyson, Edison, the Wright brothers. Just think if they'd given up. How important is whatever you're doing to you? Because fear of succeeding and moving on may be your current pattern, but it hasn't always been that way. There is evidence that you can keep going even when things are tricky. You can now walk, feed yourself, dress yourself. You learned those as a baby, but you had to be persistent and deal with many failed attempts. How about number 7, listening to the negative voices of others? Their comments and their opinions put you off. Now you have to consider the validity of what you hear. Think about your previous track record. Be honest. Do you have a history of starting things and giving up? Be honest but not brutal with yourself. So you have to consider whether you're going to let the pattern of giving up continue or if you're going to demonstrate this time that you've chosen to do things differently. But are their comments based on their limiting beliefs about life in general or about their fear for you? Are they simply trying to keep you safe in an attempt to avoid being hurt or disappointed? I keep talking about knowing your why as a really important factor. If your why is strong enough, everything gets easier. If it's the others who've told you that you can't do it, just because they say it doesn't actually make it so. It may be more about them than you, their limiting beliefs and fears. But number 8, what about listening to your own negative voice? We've talked about other voices, but what about that voice in your head? That one's potentially far more destructive. And it really is time to let go of that negative voice. What if I fail? What if I look stupid? What will others think? If it's your voice, give yourself permission to tell it to be quiet. Number 9, overwhelm. When there seems too much to do, you become paralysed. Incompletion saps your energy. The thought that it still needs to be done takes up more and more of the space in your head. Now, you couldn't eat a cow in one sitting, but maybe meal by meal, mouthful by mouthful would be great. So break things down into manageable chunks. Number 10, being a victim has become comfortable, or at least your norm. You don't need to take any responsibility. It's all other people's fault. The impact is far-reaching. Unless you take responsibility for everything you do or say, how and when you do or say it, and whether you do or say anything at all, gives other people the opportunity to decide on your emotional well-being, on the quality of your life. And it means you have to put up with exactly what they give you. It's your choice whether to continue to do the same and get the same result, or to do things differently. To take responsibility for your actions and words and your own emotional well-being. To take responsibility for your present and your future. Number 11, addiction. Food, alcohol, drugs, prescription or otherwise, sex, shopping are common addictions, and people are using one or more of them in the hope that they'll fill the void and it'll make them feel better, at least for a while. The challenge is that no addiction will ever be enough to make things feel right when they're being used as an emotional bandage. The momentary relief or pleasure is often followed by a sense of guilt, self-loathing or regret. And that in turn triggers the negative emotion and the cycle starts again. Over time, more and more is required to get the same transitory anesthetic effect. Number 12, falling off the wagon. I've broken my diet. I've had a cigarette, so there's no point in carrying on. I'll start again on Monday. Kiss of death to any diet, but it's incredibly common. The trouble is, People often feel guilty, depressed and weak. They then indulge on more biscuits, cigarettes, in order to dull the pain. But it'll never be enough unless the core issues are dealt with. If you fall off the wagon, don't wait till Monday to start again. Start it straight away. So, the solution. With any form of self-sabotage, there are a few universal principles which help. An awareness that your behaviour is the first vital step to making any lasting change. And it's important to differentiate between an isolated incident and a pattern of repetitive behaviour. Identifying what you're gaining from that particular version of self-sabotage will help you find other, more positive ways to achieve what's needed. I found it to be really common for smokers to resist giving up, not only because of the chemical addiction, but because they've created a close association between smoking and having some time out. Set realistic but challenging goals. Be clear of your why. It's much easier to avoid the self-sabotage pitfalls when you know that. Surround yourself with people who will be supportive in helping you move forward, rather than those who will indulge you and be complicit in your sabotage, or those who will undermine your confidence. Everything becomes so much easier when you have a group of people who will support and encourage you, who are prepared to challenge you constructively and who believe in you. And that's one of the reasons why the Thrive Together tribe has been created. And lastly, celebrate your successes, but not with cream cakes or wine if you're trying to lose weight or drink less. We've been looking at a whole range of different ways of sabotaging yourself. I'd like to share with you the case study of Lee. She was an executive in a large bank and she was in absolute overwhelm. She was working an 80 or 90-hour week and she was just exhausted. When we started to identify in her diary what she was up to, she spent on average 36 hours a week in meetings. She was dealing with hundreds of emails and it was just impossible. We started to actually refine what she did and I asked her to do a very simple exercise in her diary. I asked her to colour code over the last 2 weeks things in 3 ways. Things which were absolutely to do with her meeting her targets and things that she needed to do, they were being done in the right way. Things that actually she shouldn't have been doing at all, it was somebody else's job, where she was getting sucked in to do other people's things. And those things in the middle where she just wasn't quite sure. It was very revealing because a large part of her week was spent in doing things to meet other people's targets. That one of the things that she hadn't been doing was setting boundaries or managing people's expectations. So we set to, and I worked with her and her team, to create, for example, an email protocol. Because everybody was sending her a copy of every email, but there was no structure. Putting in the title, who it was for, and whether it was just for information, meant that you didn't need to open it. In terms of meetings, what they did was to recognise where it was important that a representative went to the meeting, but not necessarily her, and those times where it was critical for her to be there. They started to set up more video conferences rather than travelling. They managed the expectations. One of the important parts of our work together was to make sure that Lee recognised the importance of self-care, not only for herself, but because her team were modelling her. If she didn't create a good work-life balance, if she didn't actually learn to say no when it was appropriate, then neither would her staff feel as if they had permission to do the same. Looking after yourself first and then servicing other people means that you can keep going, that you have more energy and you've got more to give. So, how do you self-sabotage? What's your particular way of doing it? Because most of us have at least one, and very often we have one that's our default model. So over the next few days, have a look at your actions, your activities, your way of thinking. If you are self-sabotaging, it's time to stop. So let's look at the self-sabotage mailbag. My first question. I'm frightened that if I become more successful and earn loads, I'll lose my friends. Well, this is a belief, but it doesn't have to be the reality. Much will depend on how you behave with your friends. Consider what success means to you and think about your core values and whether they'll shift simply because you've become successful. What is really important to you? It's really helpful to know your core values. Lack of success will do nothing to protect those values, but behaving in alignment with them will. Good friends will be pleased for you so long as you remain true to yourself. Number 2, how can I find the willpower to lose weight? Well, willpower in and of itself is often not enough. There are lots of factors, and most of those are about your relationship with food. It's much easier to succeed in losing weight and keeping the weight off if the underlying cause is known and dealt with. Poor self-worth, lack of confidence, being lonely, being an abuse survivor, bored, etc. It could be a question of portion control or a snack habit or a snacksident, drinking too much alcohol, too much sugar. But in my experience, these are simply symptoms rather than the root cause. Consider what your motivation is to lose weight. Is it about your health, about improving your appearance, or to please someone else? Working on developing a great relationship with yourself will help hugely, as once you truly love and honour yourself, self-care becomes much easier. Support groups can be incredibly helpful, providing good information, support, encouragement and help. Number 3, I feel totally overwhelmed at the moment with both home and work, and I don't know where to start. Well, I would suggest you make the distinction between urgent and important. Emails disturb the flow, and we give them such incredible status. Prioritise your work with yourself and with your boss by learning to say no graciously. Break things down into manageable chunks. Learn to kiss the frog and celebrate each small success. Ask for help. We're almost at the end of this episode, and as always, I'd like to leave you with 3 things that I know from experience will make a real difference when you incorporate them into your life. Number 1, everything you do is a choice. What you say and do, how and when you say it, and when you do nothing. But remember, every choice has consequences, even not choosing as a choice. And the consequences are often far-reaching when we fail to make an active choice. Be mindful. Remember how powerful that can be. Remember episode 2. Number 2, be really aware of the language you use. Talk about the change you want to implement in the present tense, as if it's already happening, and use the past tense for things that you want to change. In the past, I used to give up easily, feel overwhelmed. But I'm now working on making sure that I see things through, dealing with the workload more easily. Your brain wants to please, and the way you use language makes a fundamental difference to how easy or how challenging we find things. Number 3, make a clear distinction between being busy and being productive. So much of our time these days is spent on things which do little other than slurp up our time and energy. As a result, people feel there's never enough time and that they're constantly chasing their tail, or they're on a never-ending treadmill. Think about the last 2 weeks and identify all the busy activities and consider, is it time well spent? It's been a real privilege to be with you today, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the next programme. How would you like to learn how gratitude has the power to create confidence, optimism and transformation? We're going to explore the greatness of gratitude in the next episode. Until then, be genuinely you. Want to learn more? Grab a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Thriving Not Surviving, the 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success and Fulfilment, on Amazon or wherever good books are sold.